Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that takes apart complex ideas, digs through sources, research our own notes, basically everything we can find. And our goal always is to give you that shortcut, get you properly well informed, hopefully throw in some surprising stuff, maybe make it a bit fun along the way. Today we're diving into something, well, it's incredibly human, isn't it? Stories. Just think about it for a second. The books you read, the films you watch, even how we frame our own lives day to day. There are these patterns, right? These familiar structures that just pull us in, make things make sense, feel satisfying. It's almost like our brains are just wired for it. So what if you could do more than just notice those patterns? What if you could actually, grab hold of them, use them deliberately to build these incredibly rich adventures? Adventures that are structured, but also full of surprises. Especially if you're, say, playing role-playing games solo. Well, that's exactly what we're getting into today, the whole concept of game loops in solo play.
That's a fantastic way to frame it. And yeah, our main source for this deep dive is Mythic magazine, volume 43. For anyone who doesn't know, Mythic is this really popular system for solo role-playing. It's an oracle, basically. Helps you generate twists, answer questions. It's like your GM when you're playing alone. So this volume 43, lays out this really powerful method for, structuring your solo games, giving them shape, while still keeping that element of surprise that makes Mythic great.
Right. So our mission for you today, listening in, is pretty clear. We're going to break down what these game loops actually are, why they work so well, not just in games, maybe everywhere, how you can actually, build them yourself for your solo sessions. And this is key, how they manage that balancing act between giving you control as the player and still letting those awesome, unexpected story moments happen. Basically, by the end of this, you should have a solid grasp on loops and hopefully a cool new tool for your own storytelling. All right, let's dig in. Game loops. When we say loop in this context, what exactly are we talking about?
Okay, yeah. So think of a loop as a kind of narrative formula, a repeatable pattern, a cycle that guides your role-playing adventure towards a series of general outcomes. And the thing is, these aren't some obscure academic things. They're actually patterns we already know. We love them even if we don't consciously, label them as loops.
Right, they feel familiar.
Exactly. Familiarity is huge. Each loop, it has a beginning, it has an end, and it has these sort of distinct stages or characteristics along the way. They should be simple, easy to grasp. Like you see it, you get it. The classic example they use in the magazine is perfect. Warrior finds tavern.
The class.
Warrior hears of dungeon. Warrior explores dungeon. Warrior divvies up the loot. It's that cycle. We've seen it a million times in fantasy games and stories.
And that familiarity, that kind of instant recognition, that's really why they work so well, isn't it? Why they feel so engaging.
It absolutely is. They tap into these really deep-seated expectations we have about how stories unfold. It's almost subconscious. When you start an adventure that follows one of these patterns, there's this inherent satisfaction. Your brain kind of anticipates the flow, even if the details are totally unknown. Think about the hero's journey. That's probably the most famous narrative loop or archetype there is.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The hero gets called to adventure, faces trials, overcomes them, achieves something, and comes back changed. We see that everywhere, from ancient myths to Star Wars. Our brains are pattern-seeking machines, and these loops provide a structure that just clicks. It helps us make sense of things.
Okay, so they're like a formula. But the source makes a really important point here. Just because it's a formula doesn't mean it's boring or repetitive, right?
Not at all. That's the crucial bit. The loop provides the structure, the formula, but the details within each run of that loop, they're always unique. You have a different hero, maybe a different tavern, a completely different dungeon with different monsters and traps, different loot.
Different choices the character makes.
Exactly. Different choices, different outcomes, different transformations for the character. So even if you use the same find tavern, hear of dungeon, explore dungeon loop multiple times, each adventure will feel fresh and distinct. It ensures replayability.
Like variations on a theme in music.
Precisely. And that blend of structure and flexibility, that's why loops are such a powerful tool, especially for solo role players. When you're playing solo, sometimes you want that bit of direction, You want to ensure your game has a certain theme, maybe a dungeon crawl feel or a mystery vibe. Loops give you that. They provide a kind of roadmap or scaffolding. The general shape of the adventure. Okay, I'm on a monster hunt now. But the specific events, the encounters, the twists, they all emerge during play, often thanks to the Mythic Oracle itself.
So it gives you a framework without boxing you in.
Exactly. It guides you, but it doesn't dictate everything. It helps you build a coherent story, step by step, phase by phase, but still leaves tons of room for surprise.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's break down some of these actual loop examples from the source. Because these aren't just theory, right? These are patterns you probably already know and love.
Absolutely. Let's start with the big one. The classic fantasy quest. This is like the bedrock of so much fantasy RPGing. You know the flow. It usually kicks off with getting the quest. Maybe you're hanging out in that tavern, overhear some rumors, or maybe a worried farmer runs in. My prize pig's been stolen by goblins.
Always the goblins.
Or maybe it's more official, a summons from the local lord. So, phase 1, get quest. Then phase 2 is often preparation. Gearing up, buying potions, sharpening swords, maybe studying a map, asking around for info, getting ready. Phase 3, tackle a quest. This is the main adventure part. Delving into the dungeon, tracking the goblins, navigating the haunted forest, whatever it is, facing obstacles, fighting monsters. And finally, phase 4, completion and reward. You succeed, you rescue the pig, slay the dragon, find the artifact, and then there's the aftermath, getting paid, dividing the loot, maybe gaining some fame or infamy.
Yeah, as you describe that, I'm just thinking, how many countless game sessions, books, movies follow that exact beat? It's just satisfying, like comfort food storytelling.
It really is. Okay, next up. The monster hunt, another huge staple, works in fantasy, sci-fi, horror. Even a detective hunting a serial killer is kind of a monster hunt loop. It usually starts with discovering the monster. Could be a sudden shock, there's something in the vents, or maybe it's more professional, you're hired monster hunters, you get a case.
Right, the setup.
Then comes preparation again, but maybe more specific here. Researching the creature's weaknesses, tracking its movements, gathering special gear, maybe setting traps. Then the hunt itself. This could be an active chase, stalking the beast through the wilderness, or it might be more like a mystery, following clues to find its lair. And then there's often this brilliant twist.
Yeah, you mentioned this.
The moment where the hunters become the hunted, the monster turns the tables. Maybe it ambushes you, or reveals it's way smarter or tougher than you thought. It adds this layer of real danger and suspense.
Ooh, I love that. It stops it from just being a straightforward track and kill. Forces you to adapt.
Exactly. And then, finally, the loop concludes with defeating the beast. Assuming you survive the twist, of course.
Assuming. Okay, what's next?
The relic hunt. Thing Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, that kind of vibe. It's this mix of mystery and high adventure, all centered on finding some legendary object. The source points out there are usually 2 main challenges here. First, you've got to figure out where the relic is hidden. This usually means finding clues, deciphering maps, solving riddles, lots of investigation, maybe travel.
The puzzle part.
Right. And then the second challenge is actually getting the relic once you know where it is. It's never easy, is it? It's deep in a trap-filled temple guarded by ancient spirits.
Or on a derelict spaceship full of hostile aliens.
Exactly. Could be anything. And it's not just environmental hazards. You often have rivals, other people trying to get the relic too, who might try to stop you. Adds a nice competitive edge.
Makes sense. And then a personal favorite, the crime mystery.
Yes. The whodunit. Starts, obviously, with a crime, usually murder, but could be theft, fraud, whatever. Your character gets pulled in somehow. Maybe they're the detective, maybe they're framed, maybe a friend is the victim. Then comes the core of it. Investigation. Searching for clues, interviewing witnesses, identifying suspects, piecing it all together.
The intellectual puzzle.
Definitely. But it's rarely just cerebral. The guilty party usually doesn't want to be found out, right? So, trouble ensues. Threats, chases, maybe a fight scene or two as the investigator gets too close. And it culminates in solving the crime, figuring out who did it, how, why, maybe catching them, maybe not always, but revealing the truth.
Yeah, the source description is great. Morbid fascination, intellectual curiosity, puzzle solving, with just enough dash of danger and action to add some pizzazz. Sums it up perfectly.
It does. Okay, shifting gears a bit. The horror loop. This one starts when the horror makes itself known. And it's usually not subtle. A monster appears, a killer strikes, a curse manifests, some awful crisis begins. The horror can be lots of things. Creature, killer, ghost, possession, even just a really hostile, inescapable environment. A key thing here, though, is that the characters are usually trapped. They can't just run away. Isolated cabin, locked down facility, a magical bind. Whatever it is, escape isn't an option. They have to confront it.
That's crucial, isn't it? Forces the confrontation.
Absolutely. So what follows is usually a phase of running, hiding, maybe fighting back desperately, trying to survive. Often characters get picked off one by one. The turning point often comes when they figure out how to end the horror. Discovering the monster's weakness, finding the ritual to break the curse, locating the killer's hideout. This might involve some frantic research or investigation under pressure. And then the loop finishes with that final climactic confrontation. Succeed or die trying. High stakes stuff.
Definitely ramps up the tension.
Yeah.
And then the big one, the hero's journey. We touched on it, but it's worth looking at in more detail as a loop.
For sure. It's probably the most complex and archetypal loop. It really maps out a whole transformative arc. It starts with the call to adventure, the heroes living their ordinary life, maybe a bit bored or restless. Then something happens that calls them out of it. But often there's the refusal of the call. They're scared, they feel inadequate, they don't want to leave home.
Makes them human.
Right. But eventually they accept. Often with some supernatural aid or meeting the mentor, they get guidance, maybe special items, some allies. Then they cross the threshold into the unknown world and begin the road of trials. This is where they face tests, overcome obstacles, make allies, fight enemies. Learning and growing. This leads to the approach to the inmost cave, heading towards the biggest challenge, and then the ordeal itself. The central crisis, the confrontation with death or their greatest fear, where they seem to fail but ultimately succeed.
The climax.
Yeah. And from that, they gain the reward. Seizing the sword, gaining the knowledge, rescuing the princess. But it's not over. There's the road back, sometimes facing pursuit, then the resurrection, a final, more profound test or transformation, and finally, the return with the elixir, coming home changed, with something to benefit their community or world.
Wow. Yeah, when you lay it out like that, you see it everywhere, not just fantasy epics, but sports movies, personal journeys.
It resonates because it mirrors growth, challenge, transformation, things we all experience or aspire to. Like you said, even pitching a project at work can feel like a mini hero's journey.
That's a great connection.
Yeah.
So looking across all these different loops, fantasy, horror, mystery, are there common threads? A kind of general structure we can pull out?
Yeah, definitely. You can see a pattern emerge. Many loops seem to have these common phases, maybe under different names. There's often a discovery phase, finding the quest, the monster, the crime, the goal, learning what loop you're even in. Then, preparation, gearing up, researching, planning, followed by engagement, actively dealing with the core challenge. Exploring the dungeon, hunting the monster, gathering clues, running from the killer. Then, often there's a twist. This is a key moment. Could be the hunters become the hunted thing, or a big revelation, or a final boss battle, or a major setback right before the end.
The moment things pivot.
Exactly. After navigating the twist, you get to completion, achieving the main goal, solving the mystery, defeating the horror, getting the relic. And frequently, there's an aftermath or epilogue, dealing with the consequences, dividing the loot, returning home, setting up the next adventure.
That general framework, discovery, preparation, engagement, twist, completion, aftermath, that feels super useful, like a flexible template you could use to design almost any kind of loop you wanted for your game.
That's the idea. It gives you, the player, a starting point for crafting your own bespoke loops tailored to whatever story you want to tell.
Okay, so we get the theory, we've seen the examples. How do we actually do this? How do we take these ideas and build our own loops for a solo game? The source must have a practical method, right?
Oh, absolutely. It provides a very clear, straightforward tool, the Mythic Game Leap Sheet. It's basically a simple one-page template to help you map out your loop. First things first, you need the loop goal. Every loop needs a single, clear objective. Keep it simple, just a short phrase. Think back to the ones we discussed. Fulfill a quest, hunt a monster, solve a crime, survive the horror. You give your loop a specific name based on this, like maybe investigate the Whispering Crypt or track the Cyberwolf. This goal anchors the whole thing.
Got it. Simple goal first. Then what?
Then you break that goal down into loop phases. These are the main thematic stages needed to reach the goal. The suggestion is usually around 4 to 6 phases. Again, keep them simple, understandable at a glance. So for our Investigate the Whispering Crypt loop, maybe the phases are: find the entrance, navigate the upper levels, confront the guardians, and uncover the secret.
Okay, like chapters in the story.
Pretty much. And then for each of those phases, you define your expectations. These are called expected scenes. You list out the specific things expect to happen within that phase to move things forward. So for the navigate the upper levels phase, your expected scenes might be encounter wandering undead, discover a hidden passage, bypass a trap, and maybe find a minor clue.
How many scenes per phase?
You can list up to 5, but you don't have to use all the slots. Some phases might only need 1 or 2 key scenes. The idea is to list the essential beats you anticipate needing to play through for that phase to feel complete. Keep them specific enough to guide play, but open enough for interpretation.
Right. And then, once you have your phases and expected scenes listed out, how do you actually play through them? Do you just go down the list?
Well, you have a choice. You can either manually choose which expected scene to play next within the current phase, or, and this adds a nice layer of unpredictability, you can randomize it.
Ah, okay. Tell me about randomizing. What's the benefit?
Randomizing is great when the order of scenes within a phase doesn't strictly matter. It keeps things surprising, even for you, the person who designed the loop. You don't know exactly which expected beat is coming up next. The system uses a simple D10 roll. If you have, say, 4 expected scenes listed, you roll a D10. If you roll 1, 4, you play that corresponding scene. If you roll a 5 or higher, hitting an empty line on the sheet, or if you roll a number for a scene you've already completed, you just move to the next available scene down the list.
Oh, interesting. So if you roll a blank, you don't just skip a turn, you take the next available one.
Exactly. And if you're at the bottom of the list and need the next available, you just wrap around to the top available scene. It ensures you always get an expected scene to play, unless, of course, it gets altered or interrupted, which we'll get to.
And you mentioned something about waiting.
Ah, yes. This is a neat, subtle aspect. If your list of expected scenes for a phase isn't full, say you only listed 3 scenes out of the 5 possible slots, the scenes higher up the list have a slightly better chance of being chosen randomly.
How does that work?
Because if you roll a number corresponding to a blank slot, like rolling a 4 or 5 when you only have 3 scenes listed, the rule is to take the next available scene. This means you're more likely to hit those top scenes either directly or indirectly.
Clever. So you can deliberately put scenes you think should happen earlier near the top.
Precisely. It lets you gently influence the probability without forcing a strict order. If the list is full, then obviously all 5 scenes have an equal chance.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, flexibility seems key here. When do you actually start a loop? Can it only be at the beginning of an adventure?
Not at all. That's one of the best parts. You absolutely can start a brand new Mythic adventure with a loop already designed. Like, okay, this campaign is going to be a relic hunt loop from the start.
It sets the tone immediately.
Right. But you can also, as the source puts it, throw your adventure for a loop right in the middle of a session.
Mid-game. How does that work?
Let's use their example. Imagine you're playing that 1920s occult investigator. You're just using regular Mythic rules, exploring an old manor, trying to figure out if the previous owner was into dark magic. Things are flowing organically. Then, bam, an interrupt scene happens, or just a fate roll suggests that a valuable, possibly cursed painting suddenly vanishes from the study while your back is turned.
Whoa, okay. Big twist.
Huge twist. And maybe you, the player, think, ooh, this feels like a classic mystery now. Who took it? Why? So right then and there, you can pause, quickly sketch out a simple whodunit loop on your sheet, phase 1, assess the scene, phase 2, identify suspects, phase 3, gather clues, phase 4, confrontation, and then you dive into that loop. Because loops have clear start and endpoints, they're really easy to just drop into an ongoing campaign when the narrative calls for it. Once you solve the painting theft, the loop ends, and you go back to your regular Mythic flow, dealing with whatever comes next, maybe even the original investigation into the sorcerer.
That's incredibly flexible. It lets the story dictate the structure, rather than the other way around, like adding a self-contained chapter.
Exactly. It keeps things dynamic and responsive to what's actually happening in your game.
Okay, so the loop is designed, it's active. How does it actually mesh with the core Mythic rules during play? It's not just about following the expected scenes step by step, is it?
No, definitely not. It interacts directly with Mythic's core mechanic, the chaos factor. So you've chosen or randomly selected your next expected scene from the current loop phase. That's step 1. Step 2 is you always test that scene against the chaos factor. Remember, the chaos factor is that number reflecting how chaotic or unpredictable the situation is. You roll D100. If your roll is at or below the chaos factor, the expected scene happens as planned. You play it out. using Mythic fate questions in your RPG rules to flesh out the details.
Standard Mythic scene resolution.
Pretty much. But if you roll above the chaos factor, that's when things get interesting. The scene might become an altered scene or an interrupt scene instead.
Right, the curveballs.
Exactly. But assuming the scene happens, whether expected or altered, we'll get to that difference, once you've played it through, you check it off on your loop sheet. That marks your progress through the phase. When all the expected scenes listed for a phase are checked off, that phase is complete. You then move to the first expected scene of the next phase. And once you complete the final scene of the final phase, the loop itself concludes. You've achieved the loop goal. At that point, you just return to regular Mythic rules to determine what happens next in your adventure, unless you immediately transition into a new loop.
Okay, clear enough. But you mentioned altered scenes. You said they work differently in loops compared to standard Mythic. What's the deal there? What happens when the dice say altered?
Yeah, this is a really smart distinction the loop system makes. Normally in Mythic, an altered scene means something quite different happens, maybe bringing in random elements. But with loops, the goal is to maintain the loop's thematic structure. You don't want an altered scene to completely derail the monster hunt vibe you're going for. So when you get an altered result for an expected scene within a loop, the idea is to keep the scene close to the original expectation, but introduce a surprise or a twist within that theme.
So tweak it rather than replace it.
Exactly. You roll on a specific little table on the loop sheet called the alteration table. It has 3 possible outcomes to guide you. Outcome 1 is different expected scene, if random. If you were choosing scenes randomly for that phase, this result simply means you skip the scene you rolled for and move to the next available expected scene on the list instead.
Ah, okay, so it just shuffles the order a bit.
Right. If you weren't choosing randomly, or if there are no other scenes left, this result defaults to the next outcome, which is outcome 2, change a detail. This is probably the most common result. The expected scene basically happens, but one significant detail about it is different. The examples from the source are great here. If your scene was discover a clue, the changed detail might make it clue is delivered. You still get the clue, but how you get it changes. Maybe a shadowy figure slips it under your door, changes the flavor, adds intrigue.
Still fits the find clue idea, but adds a twist.
Exactly. Or if the scene was encounter a trap, the changed detail might be encounter previously sprung trap. The trap is still there, but its state is different. Maybe it reveals who came before you, or maybe it's still dangerous in a new way.
Subtle but effective.
That's the key. Outcome 3 is add a detail. Here, the expected scene happens as intended, but something extra is introduced. It could be more the same, like wandering monster becomes wandering monsters, just ups the ante. Or it could add a related element, like someone helps guide you becomes someone helps guide you and your companions, suddenly involving other NPCs. The guiding principle for all alterations, as the source says, is keep it simple, keep it subtle. You're tweaking, adjusting, adding a little spice, not throwing the whole recipe out. You want to maintain the loop's flow while keeping the player surprised.
And importantly, even if it's altered, you still check off the expected scene on the sheet, right? Because it fulfilled its narrative purpose just differently.
Correct. An altered scene still counts as completing that expected beat.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the other possibility when you roll high against the chaos factor? Interrupts. How do they work with loops?
Interrupts are where the real randomness comes in. If you roll an interrupt for your expected scene, you basically pause the loop for a moment. You generate a random event using the standard Mythic process, usually rolling on the action meaning tables, to get a verb-noun pair for inspiration, and you create a scene based on that, just like you normally would outside a loop.
So it could be literally anything.
Pretty much. It's a chance for the completely unexpected to happen. However, the advice is to try and interpret the random event with the current phase theme in mind, if possible. An interrupt should add a complication or a tangent, maybe even a new opportunity, but it shouldn't break the loop and make proceeding impossible. It's a detour, not necessarily a derailment.
So it adds flavor or complexity, but ideally still fits the context somehow.
Yeah, or at least doesn't make the loop goal suddenly irrelevant or impossible. Now, here's the crucial difference between interrupts and altered expected scenes regarding the loop sheet. You only check off an expected scene from your list if the interrupt scene directly accomplishes what that specific expected scene was meant to do. Ah, okay. That's a key distinction.
It is. So if your expected scene was find the hidden switch, and your interrupt involves, say, accidentally leaning against the wall and revealing the hidden switch, okay, maybe you check it off. But most of the time, an interrupt will be something else entirely. Maybe while looking for the switch, the interrupt is ambush from rival adventurers. That doesn't find the switch.
Yeah, That's a whole new problem.
Exactly. So in that case, the interrupt adds an additional scene to the phase. It makes the loop potentially longer and more complex because you still have to eventually play through all the original expected scenes, unless another interrupt fulfills one later. The example used is great. If an interrupt leads to stumbling on goblins arguing about stew, that adds a scene, adds flavor, maybe an opportunity, but it doesn't check off bypass a trap or find treasure. It just makes the phase richer and more unpredictable. So interrupts are where the structure can really get shaken up with extra, unplanned content.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, this is all clicking into place, but seeing it in action would really help cement it. Let's walk through that detailed example from the source. Skylar's journey in radioactive dreams. This should show us exactly how the loop, the chaos factor, alterations, and interrupts all work together.
Perfect. So let's set the scene again. Post-apocalyptic wasteland. Radiation, mutants, old tech everywhere. Skylar's just helped save an underground community, got a moped as a reward. Now the player decides Skylar's next move isn't some grand quest, but something more grounded, scavenging. They enjoy that part of the setting. So they create a Scavenge the Wasteland game loop. It's simple, just 3 phases. Phase 1, find point of interest. Phase 2, deal with danger. Phase 3, find goods. Nice and straightforward.
Got it. So phase 1, find point of interest. What happens first?
The player looks at their sheet for phase 1. First expected scene is wander aimlessly. They test it against the chaos factor, which is 5. They roll a 35. That's below 50 since CF is 5, so it happens as expected. The scene plays out. Skylar gets on her moped, heads out from the community into the dusty wastes, drives along an old cracked highway, scanning the horizon. Using a few yes-no fate questions to guide the description, she eventually spots this overgrown, barely visible path leading off into some sand dunes. Looks interesting. Scene complete. Check it off.
Okay, simple enough start. What's next in phase 1?
Next expected scene is run across interesting sight. They test this against the chaos factor, still 5. This time the roll is 65. That's above the chaos factor, meaning it's altered.
Our first twist. What does the alteration table say?
They roll on the alteration table and get change of detail. So the scene still needs to be about finding an interesting sight, but with a twist. The player interprets change of detail in a fun way. Instead of just running across the site, Skylar literally falls into it. As she follows that overgrown path, the sandy ground suddenly gives way beneath her moped.
Whoa. Yeah. She tumbles down a slope into this hidden, partially collapsed underground cavern. So she's found her interesting sight, all right, but not quite how she planned. The scene becomes about her checking herself for injuries, checking the moped, it's okay, thankfully, and taking stock of this unexpected subterranean location.
Nice alteration. Still fits the goal of finding a site, but makes the entry much more dramatic. And that completes phase 1.
That's the last expected scene for phase 1, yep. So she's found her point of interest, the cavern bunker, and now we move smoothly into phase 2. Deal with danger.
Okay, phase 2, what are the scenes here?
This phase only has 2 expected scenes. Encounter a threat and initial exploration. The player decides to randomize the order, rolls a d10, gets a 3. Let's say that corresponds to encounter a threat.
Makes sense. Danger first, explore later. Test against chaos factor.
Yep, chaos factor is still 5. Roll is 22, happens as expected. So Skylar will encounter a threat. To figure out what kind, the player uses Mythic's random event generator for inspiration. They roll on the action meaning tables and get the words use and military.
Ooh, okay. How's that interpreted?
Skylar's fallen into an old, buried military bunker. And her arrival, maybe the vibrations, have activated something. A rusty, damaged, but still functional security robot clanks out of the shadows, red eye glowing. Used military becomes active military hardware used against her.
Classic. Robot fight in a bunker.
Exactly. The scene plays out Skylar scrambling through corridors, dodging laser blasts, eventually tricking the robot and causing a cave-in to crush it. Threat encountered and dealt with. Check off. Encounter a threat.
Yeah. Okay, only one scene left in phase 2. Initial exploration. What happens now?
They test initial exploration against the chaos factor and roll a 78. Way above the chaos factor, that means.
Interrupt. Something completely unexpected.
Bingo. Time to generate a random event. The player rolls and gets an event focus of PC negative, and the action meaning words free and vehicle.
PT negative. Free.
Yeah.
Vehicle. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, that's right. The player interprets this. Skylar's fight with the robot, the explosions, the cave-in. It blasted open a sealed garage deeper in the bunker, and inside was an old automated tank, which is now free and coming right for her.
Good grief. A tank. That's quite the interrupt.
Talk about escalating. The scene instantly shifts into high gear. Skylar's running for her life again, this massive tank smashing through walls behind her, tearing the bunker apart. It's pure chaos. She has to think fast. Remember seeing a rickety-looking bridge over a chasm earlier in the bunker complex? She makes a mad dash, lures the tank onto it, and the bridge collapses. The tank plunges into the darkness below. Huge, dramatic, totally unplanned scene.
Wow, okay, so that interrupt was intense, but did it complete the initial exploration scene?
Nope, that's the key thing about interrupts. It was a massive detour, a huge threat, but it didn't fulfill the purpose of exploring the facility. It was an additional scene tacked onto the phase by randomness.
Gotcha, so she still needs to do the initial exploration?
Correct. So after catching her breath from the tank incident, the player tests initial exploration again. Chaos Factor 5, roll is 15. Happens as expected this time. So now, finally, Skylar gets to actually explore the bunker cautiously. It's pretty wrecked after the robot fight and the tank rampage, but she can look around properly. The scene focuses on her finding logs, somatics, learning it was some kind of automated military research base, mostly defunct now, thankfully. She gets a better sense of the place. And that completes the initial exploration scene and therefore Phase 2.
What a phase. Started simple, ended with a tank chase. Okay, Phase 3, find goods. This should be simpler.
Hopefully. Phase 3 only has one expected scene. Scavenge something useful. Test against Chaos Factor. Roll is 4. Happens as expected. Skylar searches through the wreckage of the bunker, looking for anything valuable or useful that survived the chaos. The player uses a random loot table or just interpretation, focusing on the goal of finding useful goods. They roll or decide on barrier and clothes. Interpretation. Amidst the rubble, Skylar finds a locker containing an intact pre-apocalypse military radiation suit. And miraculously, it fits. In a radioactive wasteland, that's incredibly useful, a major find. It's a barrier against the elements, and it's clothes.
Perfect find to cap off the loop.
Exactly. She packs it away, and with that final scene completed, the Scavenge the Wasteland loop concludes. Skylar can now leave the bunker, presumably finding a way out, and continue her journey, the loop having provided a structured, yet very exciting and surprising mini-adventure.
That example really shows it all, doesn't it? The loop provided the basic flow, find a place, deal with danger, get loot, but the alteration, falling in, and especially the interrupt, the tank, threw in massive, memorable curveballs that made the story unique and unpredictable. Structure and surprise, perfectly blended. Hashtag outro. So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway here? Game loops, they're clearly this really brilliant way to add shape and thematic focus to your solo games. They give you that guiding hand, that comfortable narrative rhythm we talked about, but they also work with the randomness of systems like Mythic to generate those amazing unexpected moments that make stories feel alive. It's not just following a script.
Absolutely. The core idea is leveraging these patterns we already understand instinctively. By consciously using them, you get more control over the kind of story you want to experience in your solo play, ensuring it feels satisfying and coherent. But crucially, because of how they interact with things like the chaos factor, alterations, and interrupts, you still leave so much room for genuine surprise. It's that sweet spot between deliberate structure and emergent narrative. It really does help turn the raw output of an oracle into a story with real insight and flow.
So here's something to chew on as we finish up. Think about the stories you consume, books, films, games, or even the recurring patterns in your own life. Projects at work, learning a new skill, tackling a big challenge. How might actually recognizing the underlying loops in those things change how you experience them, or maybe even how you approach them? And thinking creatively, what kind of unexpected game loop could you design? Maybe for your next solo session, sure, but maybe even just as a thought experiment to bring some fresh narrative energy to how you think about challenges or projects in general.
That's a great closing thought. Lots to ponder there.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into game loops. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep telling your own great stories.